turning our attention a little bit to impact. So as this technology permeates through the organisation, I like your glass half full analogy. And clearly there are other views. I'm on a glass half full as well, on a good day anyway. So, but I'm wondering what you think the impact is on the average employee, and also maybe what do you think the impact might be on a partner in the longer run, just in terms of their ways of working. You know, are you going to be reducing the number of people that you employ? Are you just going to be doing more with them? Is it more volume of work? Is it different types of work? How do you think this will affect the average person working in Lewis Silkin?
So I think in the UK, there is a shortage of lawyers.
Yeah.
And so that's not going away anytime soon. There's certainly a shortage of good lawyers. We are always recruiting, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yes.
I think the nature of the work will change. I think we will think more about output and maybe less about hours.
Yeah.
Don't know for certain, but that would be my guess. I think hopefully there will be less of the really boring drudge work.
Yeah.
And there will be less sort of spending weekends collating documents, because that's not a high value task for someone who spent many years training in the law.
Yeah.
But it is a reality of a lot of the day-to-day of casework. It's about compiling and it's about checking, and it's not the fun, intellectual pursuit part of it.
Yeah.
So I think that will change. I think we will get more for more value out of the people who we have in the firm. I think they will be able to do higher value tasks, and they will be able to do more interesting tasks.
Yeah.
Lewis Silkin's always been sort of seen as a firm that encourages, I should say, our younger associates to be doing client-facing work much more early than I think some of our competitors might.
Yes.
We've always had a lower hours target compared to a lot of the city firms, and that's always been a bit of a cultural thing for us. Of we want to develop, very well-rounded lawyers who are not just doing big transactional deal volumes, but they're actually broadening their experience and can engage with clients, who can engage in some of the sort of more intellectual side of law. So it will change. I don't think it will be unrecognizable from what it is today. I think it will be degrees of difference over time. For the partners, I think it will again very much vary depending on what kind of partner you are, what sort of deal, team, or area of law you're working in. We have a very partner-led practice. We tend to do a lot of advisory work. So I wonder how much some of that will change. They'll maybe find it easier to gather the information, but it maybe won't look that different. I think there are other parts where it will be more about coaching. It will be more about reviewing work. They will be getting higher quality, more complete answers from associates. Day one, they'll be able to see, the work that the associate has done with an AI, and sort of see more of a complete picture of the work as they're reviewing it. So again, I think it will be degrees of variation. We took our whole partner conference last year was about legal technology and generative AI. It was really interesting how much people engaged with that, and across all of the generations of partners and across all of the types of practice groups we have. It really was, transformational, and the number of ideas they were generating on, I could use it for this, or I could use it for this, or it's changing the nature of the business. What I think the partners will have to think about is, how does this change the nature of the relationship with our clients, the way we sell stuff, the kind of services we offer? But I think that's good.
Definitely.
People are excited by that change. The idea of us being a tech-enabled law firm didn't sort of spring from my head. It was something that the whole partnership had got behind as a a way of us thinking about the way we engage with clients, the way we deliver value for clients.
I mean, I think from my perspective, I don't often run across people that are kicking their heels in a day with nothing to do. So anything that comes along and takes some of their day out is going to be useful to get to the important bits, you would hope. What's your stance in terms of, because I think this stuff can be used in different ways, right? So I would hope for a world where I ring up Lewis Silkin, you know exactly who I am, you know exactly what's going on. You're much better informed, therefore you can much better advise me. And it feels like a much more personal experience. I can see some people trying to use this stuff to kind of do what we've done traditionally with digital transformation, is like procedurize, make it into a process, lock it down, which in a way sort of loses, I think, some of the power of this technology to be more engaging. But have you done any thinking about that space around kind of how you use it, the ethics of doing this, that sort of stuff? What's been your thinking in that space?
Yeah, so we absolutely have thought about the ethics of this. We've thought about how do we maintain, the reliability. Everything is checked by a human. We have, policies and guardrails in terms of how we both use it and be assured that we're giving accurate information, complying with our regulatory duties, and how we communicate that to clients who are interested in how are we using this. There are, of course, some clients who are quite skeptical of this. There's a lot of clients who are really asking us about our usage of AI because they're expecting us to be using it. So I think it's a little bit like the old days of cloud. You had some clients who were very much like, get me everything onto the cloud as soon as humanly possible, and some who were like, don't touch the cloud. I'm not really comfortable with that. We're seeing a little bit of that with generative AI. It will take us a while for that all to shake out. So from the ethics perspective, yes, we're thinking about it. Yes, there's got to be guardrails in place. I think your question about how this leads us to interact with our clients is a more interesting question. And that is an area where it's actually just a continuation of the digital transformation of the past. There are a lot of firms who have jumped heavily into digital engagement, and that can be quite polarizing. There are certain people who far prefer to interact with the computer. I might be one of those at times. But there are also a lot of people who find that kind of computer says no experience very, very frustrating. And so it's trying to give clients the options to engage in the way that they want to engage with us. And we will always be, a personal service, particularly in professional services, whether it's technology or whether it's legal. People buy from people. And that kind of concept of a client partner who really engages closely with their clients and really understands their clients remains central to the way we'll continue to engage with people. It just might be that they have different options on how they do that engagement. So they might start with, if I take the Delphius example, they might start with a query that's on a platform asking some questions in a quite general way. They might feel more comfortable to be doing that at 2 a.m. before a board meeting the next day, pulling that together quite quickly themselves, getting an output that's kind of board ready in their tone of voice, using technology. But then absolutely, if they've got a question about it, they do want to be able to speak to somebody they know who has that context of their business and can go, well, that is what the law says, but actually from the way you engage with your employees, I would probably do it this way because a human will always have more of that context. It's quite hard sometimes to pull out the subtleties, particularly from correspondence. It's quite hard to sometimes pull out the subtleties of the organizational culture that we're working with. So there remains a valuable part of that which is human centric.
I'm always wondering where that boundary, some of us like to engage with digital services, some of us, and where does that boundary lie? Like I suppose think about, if you think about art, then there seems to be something intrinsically different between something that humans produce and something that AI has produced, but I don't really know why. But I would lean towards the human side of things. But then if it was more of a transactional service, I'd be like probably more happy doing the AI route rather than the human route, because it's going to be quicker, easier for me, and that sort of stuff. And so where that boundary lies is interesting, I think, today.
Yeah, and I don't think it's fully generational.
No.
I think we see very strong adopters at the older end of our partners and staff. And we see some people who are quite conservative about using technology at the younger end of our staff and partners. So I don't think it is generational, but I think that comfort with engaging digitally is becoming more embedded in the way people work. The way our clients expect to interact with us. They just see that in their everyday lives. That they're using technology and AI and everything else at home. They wonder why it's all paper and emails and phone calls when they come to engage with lawyers. So there definitely is a shift there in terms of client expectations. That's probably been accelerating. I also think there's a shift in the way that we engage as in-house legal teams become bigger and more sophisticated. So back in 2000, it was about 10% of the solicitors on the roll were in-house. Now it's 30%. They're changing the nature of the work that they want to do themselves, and the nature of the work they want to push out to either law firms like us or to alternative legal service providers. And so that shift will then change the way that people want to engage with law firms and technology. And they might be coming to the law firms more for the bet the farm kind of stuff than they maybe do for the routine stuff. And that will change the way they want to interact with people.
It would be remiss of us to not talk a little bit about kind of the security, the cyber and the confidentiality issues that exist, particularly in a law firm where people will be very sensitive about their information. What do you see the issues are there to consider? Where do you think the big bumps in the road are? And how do you think people might get over them?
So it is clearly a very talked about topic. Our clients ask us about it regularly. I think after the first initial wave of everyone just trying to jump in with any large language model that was available, it has sort of settled down a bit. All of the large language model providers have the ability to switch off training, not retain, have zero data retention, all of those sorts of things. One of the bits that actually I think has caught a lot of the startups a little off guard is remembering to also switch off the trust and safety elements of some of this. So as a law firm, particularly who does a lot of employment work, some of the content we wind up dealing with can be quite distressing, and would trip content filters, which isn't great, particularly if there was the potential that a human might review those from a third party. So switching those off, again, the model providers now provide that opportunity. It was missed by some of the startups early doors. I think that's all been taken care of now, but it is something that we check when we're procuring. Not only are we sure you're not training on our data or our clients' data, but also is there zero eyes on access to any of our data that we're putting through these large language models, I should say. So that kind of confidentiality piece, I don't think that that's as much of a concern now. Clearly, we and I'm sure all of our peers have policies in place that say you can use these tools that we have bought for you and have deployed firm-wide, and you can't use these tools that we haven't bought for you and haven't rolled out, just to guard against that. But that confidentiality piece, I think, is pretty well put together. There are still areas of how do you make sure that you're getting the right information out. I think that's probably the biggest concern for a lot of us now in terms of how do you responsibly use AI is checking the outputs, checking the inputs, making sure that that those two line up, and that you don't accidentally, put information in that you would have edited out if you've been writing it yourself. And so a lot of this is about carefully reviewing the outputs of the large language models to make sure you're giving an accurate answer.
I guess one of the challenges I can see, though, is the volume of input could be high compared to what you can do today. As a human, you can only read a certain amount and ingest a certain amount, whereas obviously with the LLMs, they can, in theory, generate a lot or respond to a lot more input. How do you deal with clients, for example, that might be like, I do not want my data used for anything other than this, and you've got this aggregate of knowledge inside your organization where you might have some people going, you can't use my data for anything other than my stuff. How are you putting in protections and controls for those sorts of things?
So I think it does present an interesting data governance challenge.
Yeah.
Where we are at the moment is actually giving a large language model access to your entire corpus of data, even if it was ethically okay, which it isn't. Wouldn't be very helpful anyway, because you get a garbage in, garbage out problem. And it's very difficult for a large language model to look at a set of 10 employment contracts and understand that actually that clause is in there because it's kind of gold standard. And that clause is in there because it was a really specific hire in a really specific industry with, where there was a particular personal relationship where they wanted to put that in, but you'd never do that for anybody else. And so that context, as we were talking about earlier, is missing from a lot of these documents. So you probably don't want to just go, here's
Take
a load
everything.
of information, have fun.
Yeah.
What you want to do is actually provide kind of really good, well-grounded sources. So all law firms have precedents and know-how that is curated and managed by our knowledge lawyers. And that's where we're pointing the data to. So you're using that source data. Now, when you do work, that work might lead a human lawyer and potentially in future a human lawyer assisted by AI to find good places to update that know-how. But I think it is a two-step process that you do the work, you learn from the work as a human or maybe as an AI assisted human, and then you quite deliberately choose to update the source data that your AI tools use based on that, rather than trying to kind of one-shot knowledge from everywhere, a big data lake into into a contract, because that does present both security and ethical concerns.
Cool. So let's put our looking forward hats on and make some predictions. So let's wind the clock forward to the 2030s. Let's keep it a little bit vague, because then no one can hang us on any dates.
Okay.
So the 2030s, what do you think is going to be different by that timescale?
I think, again, glass half full. I think we will have much, much more legal services then than we do now. I think that as generative AI makes legal services more efficient and therefore more affordable, more people will use it. And it's Jevons paradox, isn't it? That kind of says as technology gets cheaper, actually the market for that technology gets bigger. So actually I think that we will see a lot more, particularly in the commercial realm, a lot more use of AI, and that will drive a much greater usage of legal services and adjacent legal services. I also think law firms will be still recognizably law firms. We are going to be a tech-enabled law firm. We're not a technology firm. It's very important that we remain a law firm. But I think we will start doing more and more adjacent services. So, things like Delphius, which is a technology product that sits alongside our legal services, more training, more support for our clients in how they use the technology, how they build their playbooks, those sorts of things. So I think the legal sector will sort of expand into a bit more of a broader professional services space.
Yep.
Just like I think the accountancy firms and others have done. I think we'll see a blurring of some of those boundaries. And I think there's a potential that there will be a bit of a change in what kind of size of law firm you see. I think that potentially, mid-sized firms, I'm kind of talking my own book here a little bit, but mid-sized firms will be able to do bigger things because actually the AI will help us do that. And so I'm pretty positive about this. I think there will be a shakeout in terms of how people use the technology. But I think the law firm will remain, a strong thing, and the legal sector will remain a big part of the UK economy.
Agreed, actually. Yeah, agreed. So if I was a graduate starting tomorrow in Lewis Silkin on my journey, what would you tell me to focus in on? What would you say I need to be really good at to be successful in the future?
I think having an appreciation of technology and actually an appreciation of process and systems thinking is quite important. We've just had a recent law graduate join my team, and she has just finished a law degree, but one of her modules was legal technology, and she actually got to go out to clients to go and experiment with legal technology with them and do a project with them while she was doing her law degree. So it's really encouraging to see lawyers, aspiring lawyers, getting to do that as part of their legal education. We're starting to rotate all of our apprentice solicitors through the technology department so they get an appreciation of legal technology, and we're hoping as the rules for solicitor training and solicitor qualification change, we should be able to do that for our trainees as well. But so I think that kind of broader appreciation of the place of technology in law and the place of process and systems thinking in law will be important for our legal grads. I think for our more general graduate population, our junior talent, it is again about having that open-minded kind of continuous improvement mindset of how do I improve the processes I'm working on, and thinking about that and getting exposure early to some of those things. As I was saying earlier, it's easier than ever for people to use these technologies to do that improvement. It's not like historically where you might have a great idea, but you then have to wait for IT for 6 months to actually prioritize that change and get it shipped into a product. You can do a lot more of that yourself, and so I think encouraging junior staff to think about how technology can be used in their day-to-day work. That's actually often where a lot of the value will come. Often, if you look at the structure of the law firm, the more junior staff are doing the more routine stuff, which might be where there's actually higher value from the efficiencies. Whereas if you're one of our technology partners who is doing the really, really complex, tens of millions pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds IT outsourcing deals, that might not be where you want to lean the AI today. But if you've got somebody doing higher volume work at the associate level, that might be the lower hanging fruit. And so making sure that they feel really comfortable to suggest and embed change within their work is, I think, an important part of the development mindset that we build in them.
Definitely. The fact that the future of all this technology is so uncertain as to, is it VHS, is it Betamax, what exactly is going to play out, how are you approaching that, and how are you still making progress? Because you are clearly driving forward rather than sitting back and waiting for when a VHS and Betamax battle finishes, right? You're stepping forward and, what are you doing in that space?
we don't know if
Yeah.
any of this is really going to be transformative
No.
at all. The industry is moving so quickly
Yeah.
that it might be that the leaders of these technologies today are completely different to the leaders of the technology in 2,
Yeah.
3, 4 years' time. And
Yeah.
so while we've gone, and rolled out a generative AI tool, for the whole firm, we are open to
The game
do we
changing.
change, to the game
Yeah.
changing, and
Yeah.
so it isn't one tool to rule them all. I think it will be the way we're thinking of our bets is we're placing a big bet on one tool
Yeah.
to try and transform some parts of the work, but we're also making smaller bets on other tools that might be more specialist to a particular practice area. So for our patents team, for example, we've acquired a tool for some of them to use in patent drafting because we've realized that actually the general legal technology tools aren't actually that good at that. It's quite a specialist area with those line drawings and everything else. So how we place those bets, and I think more than a traditional digital transformation, it is about placing strategic bets and then being open to the market changing.
Yeah.
That's been sort of how we've been thinking about this, and we're quite open to changing that over time, seeing where it's working, seeing where it isn't, seeing where we should be investing either with commercial tools or building our own capability. So, Delphius being a good example, we've invested to build our own capability there because that wasn't something that was easily covered by a commercial tool in the market.
Yeah.
It is an interesting question about that kind of how do we see that kind of bet playing out?
Yeah.
I do wonder how much of a moat these tools have.
Yeah.
If the prompt libraries are exportable, if the workflows are relatively easily recreatable, there's definite value in having these more specialist tools. But I don't think it's kind of switching from SAP to Oracle level of complexity in terms of re-engineering.
If the game changes.
So that's why I'm relatively comfortable about those bets we're taking. And I think it's also really important to get that out to everybody. That was the other big part of our rollout strategy that the whole of our board felt really strongly about, was not having haves and have-nots.
Yes.
And so we took an early decision that we would have one tool for the whole firm, make that available to everybody once they've done their training, but make that available to everyone because we could see the value across the whole firm.
Yeah.
We maybe only had proven the value in 2 or 3 places, but we could see the opportunity, and therefore we took that bet that we could actually find that value across the firm, rather than trying to say, okay, well, these people get this tool and these people get this tool and these people get this tool, which I think would have changed the dynamic of the conversation. It would have made people less, it would have given people less opportunity to experiment.
Yeah.
And it would require us to have kind of more designed how people were using Gen AI. And I just don't think that's a sustainable approach to how you roll out these technologies.
Yeah. I think as well, basically, in the meantime, you're generating value, right? So it's not sort of a difficult decision to make. People don't like the idea of what they could consider later to be throwaway investment because they maybe bet on the wrong horse. But the reality is you're getting quite a lot of benefit in the meantime. So
and with these commercial tools, they are OPEX. It's not like I'm building out a big chunk of CapEx into my business, and so the cost and the reward are matched in time.
Yeah.
And although they're expensive tools, if you can generate a few extra hours of productive work, chargeable work for most of our lawyers over a year, they still pay for themselves because actually the time of lawyers is very, very valuable, and it's constrained. And so although some of the absolute numbers are quite big, the return on investment calculation is sometimes hard to capture the data, but is quite easy to conceptualize.
Yeah. Cool. I think my observation, obviously we have early careers people in our organisation as well, and whilst there's a level of uncertainty about how far this will go and what the impact is, I do think ultimately what I tried to say to all of them is like great people will always do great.
Yeah.
Regardless of the environment they're in, right? So that's what you've got to focus in on, being the best you can be, making the best of your journey. And regardless of what happens with the technology around you, those people that do that well will do well. Those that don't may have a rough time of it. So I think that's encouraging people to embrace it, encouraging people to think about it, for them to think about how it can maximise their performance so they can do great things.
Yes.
Is probably an easy thing, an action. Because I think, again, we talk to people who feel a bit helpless, feel like there's a train coming at them that they can't do much about. And I just think that's not true. Right? So there's lots you can do to take control. And I think we should encourage early careers people to be thinking in that way.
Yeah, I think definitely sort of helping people think about growth mindset, think about how can they experiment, how can they be curious.
Yes.
I think curiosity is probably the most important part of anybody's career growth.
Yeah.
Far beyond a lot of other skills. So encouraging curiosity. There's so much content out there now. There's so many ways to express that kind of curiosity. That's what we need to encourage, and encourage growth mindset, because that's how people will adapt.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Look, that was amazing. Thank you very much. Really good insights. Fantastic to have you along. I'm sure the audience will get lots of value from it. And thank you again. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really great fun.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.